let's see how this works. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again after such a long time. It really has been some time since I've made a last video. It's always a bad habit to start videos and blog posts with that, isn't it? So let's jump right into it. See if I can remember what happened since I've spoken to you last. We are, of course, on our way to the dentist because that's what we do now these days. When you're over 50, you're at the dentist basically 7 days a week. You might as well move in, really. This time it's because Julia has some dental work done. She's getting an implant, and that happens in various stages. So that's what we're doing right now. That means I have a little bit of, time to sum up what has happened over the last few months. Perhaps the most recent thing that surprised me literally this morning is when I opened up my 3D Shenanigans channel on YouTube. I had 150 more subscribers than I thought there should be. So that's surprising when on that small channel, it's just a side project for me. I get that many subscribers within 30 days. So that's surprising. And it turned out it was for the second time the girl in the orange dress that caused quite a bit of stir. It's one of those things that happens sometimes with YouTube when you put a video out and there's really not much response to it, and then eventually the algorithm goes and promotes it and the thing takes off. So the video was something I made back in June about the new Epic animation sample project. So they've put out this thing that they've introduced, that GDC that lets us use motion matching inside of Unreal Engine. And just in case you're not familiar with that, motion matching is a technology where instead of a traditional blend space, you don't blend a handful of animations together. So like if your character is currently walking or running and then they're jumping, then a blend space would just look at that action and transition to the jumping. And then once they're done jumping, they're transitioning back to whatever else they're doing, like, walking, running, swimming, whatever. And that's just a linear transition. But that's also, while there's no pops in there, it isn't, it's not that entertaining. And that's where motion matching comes in. So instead of just blending into the same of the 12 animations that you have on file, you have a look at what would be the right angle. If my character is turning left a little bit, then a straightforward jumping animation wouldn't make sense. But if we had like 20 or 30 or 50 jumping animations to choose from, where the character could jump straight forward or a little to the left or a little further to the left or a little to the right or whatnot, maybe it comes from the bottom angle, maybe it comes from the top angle, then motion matching has a look at where's my character currently, where are they heading, and then it makes a decision of what next animation should be played. And that is what motion matching is. And The Last of Us Part 2, they had that, and AAA video games, they have that, but of course it's not attainable really for humans like us to just quickly implement that, because it entails really like 500,000-600,000 animations, or 500 or 600 or 1,000. I'm not saying 500,000. That would be a bit much. But the way this works is, so this animation sample project that has over 500 animations, and they're just, variations of the same thing, but makes it all look natural. And what's cool about that project is that Epic are giving it away for free, including the 500 plus animations, and we can use it. So literally on launch day, I was wondering, well, how difficult is it if we wanted to replace that UEFN character that is the default orange mannequin? How difficult is it to replace that with a DAS character with DAS to Unreal? And of course, I made it work. This is thanks to live retargeting. So you do not, like many people always try to do, you do not retarget every single of the 500 animations on a per character basis, because you just go nuts doing that, and then you're replugging it in and all that. You do none of that. You just put your DAS character underneath, or your to be targeted character underneath the current mannequin, set the current mannequin to invisible, and let this mannequin live retarget the mesh that you really want to use. So, to cut a long story short, I did that, and with the DAS character, and because I wanted to try something else, which is cloth dynamics, chaos cloth dynamics, which I've made a video about recently, if you're interested in that, on my main channel. I also gave her a dress, and the dress walks around and it looked really good, and it was a bit high res, so for real-time simulation that really wasn't all that suitable, but yeah, I made it work, and that was more like a proof of concept. So I put that out there as a 1 minute short on my main channel, and also as a slightly extended 1.5-minute version out on my 3D Shenanigans channel. And what happened was that the short version really took off. Short is another weird thing on YouTube. So sometimes they can take off, and often they really don't get any attention whatsoever. So usually my short, they tank, and nobody takes any notice. But this one, it's because it had a girl in it who has a wafty dress and jumps over balustrades, and you can see her underwear and all that. So it's all, I think that's what really attracted the community. And so that's what took off on the short street with close to, I think it was 11,000 views. It's kind of crazy. That usually doesn't happen in a couple of days for me. So it's, it's funny when that happens. But the extended version over on 3D Shenanigans, that really nobody really paid any attention until, last week, where this thing now has 15,000 views, which is super surprising. So that's just one of those weird things that happens sometimes with YouTube, but your videos go viral because the algorithm suggests it. So currently that video gets 3,000 views a day, which is exciting, and it's a very different audience to discover, because the shorts audience, they scroll on their mobile phone and they have an attention span of 0.1 seconds, and if something catches their attention, they go watch for maybe 10 or 30 seconds if you're lucky. And the normal YouTube audience, the long form audience, the one that doesn't like watching portrait videos, the ones that watch things on their computer or on their big screen TV, that's a very different audience. So first of all, the resolution is better, you see more detail, and as such, one of the things that happened, and I thought I'll just, this is something that's just so recent, so I'll bring it to your attention. On the mobile, the resolution was so low that people didn't understand that she was in fact wearing underwear. And this is something that people were thinking, oh my God, she's not wearing any knickers. And she is, and we had to sort of make that clear in the comments, but that's what the shorts audience thought. Whereas the long form audience, they didn't really see that as a problem, quite the opposite. They were saying, great execution, and it looks like a very natural sample, and they were more interested about the technical specs and how I did it. And I do have a video on that on my channel as well, which was important for me to do, because I want you to have a look at this principle as well. So that made me think, and it's because, I thought that the first time when the shorts took off, and now a month later when the long form thing took off, the best sort of comments are in the direction of, what game is this? Can we play it? We want to play it. And of course it's a tech demo, if anything, and something that doesn't even perform very well, but it looks like people would quite openly say, hey, I don't really mind what else is happening in the game, as long as there's a girl with a wafty skirt that can walk around and I can look underneath it. That's all really that I need to do for happiness. So I'm thinking, great. I mean, how difficult is it to put a game project like that together? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm really not a game dev, but I'll see what I can do in regards to a playable demo. Maybe that could be fun. So the big consideration that I have is that I've done this with Das clothing and the Das character. And what really happens with the clothing is that it's very high res. It was fairly low. It was about 8,000 polys. So that's not big for a garment. But even with that, Chaos Cloth and real-time simulation has struggled keeping up with a decent frame rate. So in games, we're sort of used to something like 60 frames and above, and 30 is kind of okay if you're using an adventure game or something, but really we're used to that super fluent frame rate, and that's at least 60 frames or around that. Somewhere between 30 and 60 is good if you hit that. But of course, it's no good if you can only hit that on extremely powerful hardware. So in my case, that skirt video was captured in an RTX 3090 with 24 gig of VRAM and dual Xeon Platinum 8160 rig, so quite powerful. Yesteryear, but quite powerful, and 256 gigabytes of RAM. So that's a lot of RAM. And the project in real-time play at I think 2K was performing with about 20 frames a second. So obviously that's not good enough. So that is a problem. So I don't know how to solve that other than waiting for better hardware to arrive, or for making the garment less detailed. So those are two things I can try. Both wait and and see if I can make that less detailed. So that's one thing I can try. And also, while I develop it, maybe new hardware is just going to arrive, and then that's a good selling point for everyone to upgrade to 5090 plus $7,000. That takes up 2,000 watts of power as you do basic window shifting with it. So one of the things. So, very interesting. I thought I'd let you in on that little, thing that happened. So then there's something else that has happened. I'm, of course, still working on the Heart of Mercy project very hard, 3 days a week. And I'm learning a lot. It's a really good project to sink my teeth into. And this is also an Unreal Engine. And of course, Unreal Engine is one of those things that is, well, it throws a different problem at you every day of the week. So for once, what used to work on Monday doesn't necessarily work on Tuesday. That's just how it rolls. I think that's how 3D works in general. And that's something that I sort of struggle with occasionally. So sometimes I feel like there's a lot of time that gets wasted just because things don't work the way they're supposed to. As case in point, right now I'm dealing with multi-pass rendering, and that is a technique by which you don't render out the whole picture. It's a bit like canvases in Studio. If you render the background and the foreground character separately, and then you do the combination in post. And canvases, like many other post-production tools, they let you do the state that doesn't just deal with picture data, but also with sort of data that a compositing software can use to make something better. And one of those things is a depth pass, and the other one is an ID pass, like an ID map. And the way this works is that a depth map is basically a black and white image, like a grayscale image, and it shows you. It's really hot. It's like over 30 degrees in Florida, by the way. So I'm hot, but it's good. It's overcast. I'm wearing sunscreen just in case you were wondering. All good. So the depth map is this thing that shows you all the objects in your scene in different grayscale values, and it does that so that you can apply soft focus effect in the post retrospectively. So rather than that being rendered in as image information, you have the opportunity to do that in the post. So that means if you've already spent, several hours rendering, and now you think, well, the depth of field isn't quite right, you'd have to re-render, which is why it's a better solution to do that in the post-production and not worry about camera depth of field in the render if you have the luxury and the knowledge of how to do that. So that's the depth map. And then an ID map is something that gives you a flat color value for every single object in your scene. And that is helpful if you wanted to occlude stuff that you didn't know you needed to occlude. And if you wanted to color something differently, so like if you had a single vase in your scene and you think, well, that's currently red, but I'd like to make that green, rather than selecting the color and masking that off, you can just say with the ID map, just the vase object, and change that color, override that particular color, so it creates a mask from that ID. And that's kind of cool. Sadly, none of these things work in Unreal Engine as they're supposed to, and it's probably because I'm dealing with these image plates. So those are the transparent rendered 2D image plane actors that we use for our project. So it looks like depth and ID map I can't generate for now, but I'm getting in touch with a professional. See if he can help me out. He's not good at responding, but I'll see if he maybe gets back to me. Who knows? So we'll see. So I did solve the problem of rendering multi-passes for background and the plate objects, but again, it just doesn't work the way it says it does on the tin. Like, you can put different objects on different layers in Unreal Engine, and layers, think of them as, so we'll see, group or selection. And so you can say, well, that vase and that cube, they go on layer 1, and then, I don't know, that couch over there and the TV, that goes on layer 2. And then in the multi-pass rendering, you will just tell it, make 2 passes, make one for the couch and make one for the cube. And what Unreal Engine should be doing is give us 2 folders with nothing but the cube and nothing but the couch in those folders as EXR or PNG sequences. And in reality, what it really does is it gives you 2 passes, each of which contain both the couch and the cube. So there's really no difference in them, and that's just wrong, isn't it? So it should work differently than it actually does. So, I can work with it. I can find ways around it. I can make different levels and just delete the objects that I don't need and then render that out as that multipath. But the point is, it's functionality that it's documented and supposed to work and doesn't, and that makes it a little bit difficult to work with Unreal Engine at times. That, and also the fact that there's a ton of documentation and hobby coder tutorials on how to do things for an actual game, but there's hardly anything for proper visual post-production like the stuff that we do. And that's a bit problematic because it's like we have to invent the tutorials. I have to write the stuff, document the stuff that is necessary for me to actually redo it in 6 months' time. So, but I'm doing that, and I'm having a lot of fun doing that. So yeah, that's a little Heart of Mercy update. We're about a year into my coming on board on the project. The project's been going longer, but I think recently we've had a little statistic, and it looks like we have done about just over 50% of the scenes roughed out as we want them to come out. So there's another 50% to go, plus refinements. And we're now getting to the point where we're doing compositing tests, and that's an interesting thing to do. So I'm hoping that in the next couple of months or so, we're going to get something like a bit of an EPK promo reel that I can share with you so that you can see what I've been actually up to for the last year. So yeah, that's my little Heart of Mercy update. Something else that's happened literally this last weekend, I had a question from one of my supporters, Angelique, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. It's just one of those off-the-cuff chats that we've had about how can I make my DAS characters look less plasticky and less uniform and less, like they currently look. And I totally agree. It's a question that many people ask, and they really, especially if you're a hobbyist, you don't really know what it is that's happening there and how to avoid it. Because if you look close up and let a character, even with default lighting, render for long enough, it looks great. But then you put them in a wide shot and it looks bland. And that's often, people think they need to tweak the skin shader, and that's not the whole picture there. So it's often related to the lighting, and also in regards to image composition. If you don't see stuff in the background, if everything's just pitch black in the background, it doesn't matter what you put there. If nobody sees it, it's lost. So there's lighting is a big aspect, especially ambient lighting, and adding point lights so that you accentuate objects in the background. Also the rim lighting so that you actually accentuate the three-dimensionality of your figure. Otherwise it's not going to read as well as, there not being that. So like one HDRI isn't the answer really. That's even though that is very easy to get you sort of 80% to something you can look at, it certainly doesn't look fantastic. And that's usually because the HDRI, unless it's specifically designed for a specific camera position and a specific position of the object you're trying to render, isn't really going to work. So the moment you have the figure in a standing pose in the center of the scene, it's going to look great. But the moment you have something like, 7 figures or 2 figures in different positions, that HDR is going to look, bland. And then you get to scale and all that. So it's, it's really not a one-click renders, always amazing images. It's just not how it works in 3D. So one of the things that I was discussing with Angeli, and that's what I made a supporter exclusive video about, is how to use detail maps to add additional detail overall on your entire character, depending on how far they are away from the camera. That's an interesting topic because a high bump value looks great on a wide shot and perhaps on a medium shot, but looks terrible on a close-up, whereas no bump map looks great in a very tight close-up, but looks terrible on a wide shot. So I'm thinking of making a little product that lets us apply these things to the details channel of the Genesis 9 and 8.1 figures, because I haven't seen anything like that. I think I'd like for one of those things to exist, so I might spend some time and doing that. And on a final note here, I've made a little post on my ArtStation page about that comparison. If you're interested, there's a link in the description of this video that we'll have a look at it. If you look at it on a large enough monitor, you can see what I mean. And there's some comparisons between wide, medium, and close-up shots with different bump settings. So it's the same bump settings, but a different visual result depending on how far away the camera is framing up the character, or how tight the camera is framing up the character. That's it for my update. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope it's not going to be as long for the next one. Have a wonderful rest of the summer, and let's hope Julia's dental thing is going to go well. Take care. Bye-bye.